You guys are back in the old school. Hey guys, I'm the Retro Reject, and of course, I got a theory for you today. Oh man, it's actually been a while since I did one of these. But anyway, today's theory is about a man who basically mastered the art of creativity and magic, and inspired many people to try to follow their dreams and make them come true, and left this world leaving a legacy with a mouse, a couple of theme parks, and a thriving animation studio. And of course, I am talking about Walt Disney. Wait a minute. Actually, scratch out the last part about the animation studio, because when it comes to them, they're a bunch of hypocrites, because they prevented a 7-year-old kid's dream of wanting to make a Disney movie come true. And as well as their motto being nowadays, if we made it before, let's do it again, but a lot worse, so we can just get money out of it. And no, it's not the theory that some people think that Walt Disney was like cryogenically frozen and his body was hidden somewhere within the Walt Disney theme parks, or that his severed head is in a little jar and it's also hidden somewhere within the Walt Disney theme parks. No, it's not that. Basically, what I have for this theory today, it kind of just came to me like any true sort of inspiration, because basically I was just sitting around one day thinking to myself, you know, Retro Reject, Walt Disney was such an amazing man, and of course such an amazing man deserves some kind of tribute. Well, Retro Reject, you are just sitting around. Why don't you just go up to your computer and use your editing software to make this little tribute video to Walt Disney and then just leave it at that? Yeah, but I feel like that would be so much of a disservice to him, reaction of me pretending to be the audience. I mean, no one person can make a perfect tribute. But, like I said, any true sort of inspiration just comes to me and hits me like some of that good old Disney magic, and I just thought to myself, what if a perfect Walt Disney tribute was staring right in front of us the whole time? The Disney movies themselves! Oh, way to go, Retro Reject. We could have told you that from the beginning of this video. Why do you always mock me? Reaction of me pretending to be the audience? No, I'm just not going to leave it at that. All the Disney movies are a perfect tribute to Walt Disney, because that would include the very bad ones. But no, I think there is one movie within all the Walt Disney movies that is a perfect tribute to Walt Disney that captures both his life story as well as the creativity and magic he had. Now, of course, the word tribute can mean so many things. Now, what I have said, like I said before, is that it has to capture both the story and as well as the magic and creativity that Walt Disney had. But, of course, everybody has their own opinions. I mean, very well, you could say that the one I'm about to reveal is not a tribute to Walt Disney at all. But, of course, I really don't understand why, because I think it's very close. But I do have two other movies which I'm just going to call honorable mentions, because they are really good movies, and as well as they do have aspects to them that you could very well say that they are a tribute for Walt Disney. So, yeah, but also at the same time, there's also the other fairy tale movies, which I'm not putting as tributes, because basically they are retellings of the old fairy tales. But of course, Walt Disney actually had to change those ones to be more for the audience, because some of those old fairy tales, those were dark. And that also kind of goes for the reason of why I'm not putting Lion King as a perfect tribute to Walt Disney, because it's basically a retelling of the story of Hamlet, except it has lines in it. Sorry, Nala, because my love for you as a character, it can't justify me for putting Lion King on a perfect tribute to Walt Disney. Let's reveal the Disney movie that I think is the perfect tribute to Walt Disney. And that movie is Bambi. What? And no, it is not because I consider Bambi my favorite Walt Disney movie, like it was a Disney movie that was actually created by Walt Disney. It's because how it hits the first mark of what I think considers to be a perfect tribute for Walt Disney is because the animation in this movie, I consider it really good. And it has one of my favorite elements to have to a movie, the show show things than rather tell things, because most of the movie it's like very little dialogue, but it relies more on the show aspect, and it's just a simple coming of age story, just following around a deer and his friends. And how it hits the second mark is because you'd be surprised how many moments within this movie could be reflective on Walt Disney's life, and I'm about to go over them. And of course, spoilers if you haven't seen a 77-year-old movie, I really recommend you go watch it. Moment number 1, a love of nature. Now, like I said, the whole message of Bambi is basically just to follow the story of Bambi coming to age and learning about all the things around him. But it also has kind of just that message of you gotta admire nature for even the littlest of things, because like there's that one cute scene in Bambi where like Bambi is learning about the different things in the forest, like birds, butterflies, and flowers. Now, of course, how this relates to Walt Disney is because, well, he was a nature man himself. In 1901, when he was born, he grew up on a small farm. And when he did get a little bit older and did first start drawing things, he would draw things of nature, and which he would sell to like the neighborhood kids. And also there is a moment in Bambi 2 where his dad is teaching Bambi about like how he can feel the forest and like learn things from it. And I feel like that's just kind of how it could reflect to Walt Disney, is that it's just kind of the creative ambition. Like you can take all the things around you and you could just use it to your own. Moment number 2, the trio of Bambi, Flower, and Thumper. Now, how this reflects to Walt Disney is because when Walt Disney was first starting out in his animation, he relied on 2 other people to help him out, which were his older brother Roy and his friend Iwerks. Now, of course, Roy was his older brother, and he was always around to help him out. And Ub was a person that he met when he first went to animation school. And of course, when Walt first started out, they were basically working together to try to start their own animation company. Which, of course, perfectly reflects on how Flower and Thumper were helping Bambi out to learn the things of the forest. Moment number 3, Pauline. Now, when Bambi first met Pauline, he was very shy and very anxious, knowing that there was a female deer attracted to him. Now, of course, later in the movie, they do get married, I guess. I don't know how nature works, but anyway, they do eventually do something later in the movie that also reflects to what happens to Walt Disney in real life, but how Bambi and Pauline meeting each other reflects to what happened to Walt Disney is because, well, Bambi kind of had the same personality as Walt. On the inside, Walt was very kind of shy and secretive, not really wanting to get himself too much out there, but on the outside, he had this like happy smile and very nice to the public. And he would want to like probably take things a little bit slow with relationships, because when Lillian, his wife, how their relationship started out was because basically Walt actually just hired her as an artist for his animation studio, and of course later that developed into a love and they eventually got married together. Lillian's personality doesn't really kind of reflect to like what Pauline's personality was, but I mean, there is one moment within this movie, I feel like that could be a reference to to Lillian, because the scene that happens right after Bambi and Pauline meet each other, there's a bunch of deer bounding, and that could be a reference to her maiden name, Lillian Bounds. Moment number 4, hardships. Now, of course, we know Walt Disney as the man who basically was a successful man and made masterpiece after masterpiece of movies. But of course, in his early days, that could be further from the truth. I mean, he was rejected a lot by a lot of animation studios, and was having a hard time trying to get up on his feet in the film industry. And that wasn't until he made Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which was a massive success, and which started the whole Disney animation studio. And of course, that reflects to a scene that happens in Bambi, where it's winter time and basically Bambi and his mother are having a hard time trying to find food and trying to survive. And of course, the moment where Bambi gets up on his feet, be and like have a good time and knowing that he's successful is the ice skating scene where Bambi's kind of having a hard time trying to get up on his feet on the ice until Thumper actually helps him out. Moment number 5. Bambi's mother dies. Yeah, and I know so many people like to point this out because, of course, Walt Disney's mother did die in 1938 because after the success of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Walt Disney wanted to make his mother a new house for her to live in. But sadly, there was an unchecked gas pipe within the house, and it started a gas leak, and Walt Disney's mother died due to a carbon monoxide poisoning. And of course, a lot of people think that he was so depressed that his mother did die, so he decided to have future Disney characters have some kind of parental figure die in their life. Now, keep in mind, also, Bambi came out in 1942. Now, of course, in Bambi, Bambi's mother was shot by a hunter, and of course, Walt Disney's mother died due to a gas leak. But there's also one thing I like to point out. Of course, the man shot the gun that killed Bambi's mom, but the person who was in charge of the gas leak, of course, obviously didn't do a very good job with checking those gas pipes to make sure that there were no gas leaks. So, in a sense, they have the same threat. A man killed Bambi's mother, and another man killed Walt Disney's mom. Now, of course, to go on another thing with the gas leak is actually because there's another threat that happens within this movie, and that happens later, which is the fire in the forest. And what comes out of fire? Smoke, aka poisonous gas. And also another little fun thing to mention about some poisonous gas is because Walt Disney actually died due to lung cancer, and that was because he liked smoking. Poisonous gas. So yeah, we just connected two things together. Moment number 6, Bambi's dad. Now, the person I think Bambi's dad reflects with is Walt Disney's brother, Roy. Now, of course, I did previously say that Roy could also be a reflection to either one of Bambi's friends, either Thumper or Flower. Now, but just keep this in mind. Those were just kind of specific moments within the movie. It doesn't have to. He doesn't have to stay the same character every time. But basically, Bambi's dad, he was never really around Bambi as a kid. He was off doing his own thing. It wasn't until Bambi's mother died that he took him in and he raised him as his own and just taught him how to be a better deer. And as Bambi got older, of course, he kind of let Bambi go do his own thing, but he was just still around to help him out whenever he needed it. Now, of course, the same thing can be said with Walt and Roy. Right? Now, of course, in this case, Walt was the one who was off doing his own thing because he had to work at his uncle's railroad station at one time. He went to animation school. He even went off to France during World War II to drive ambulances for the Red Cross around France. So, yeah, until after Walt came back and started working in the animation, Roy joined him to help him with the animation business, eventually becoming the true titan of the company we know today. Moment number 7, Flower and Thumper leaving Bambi. Now, of course, in Walt Disney's life, there was a famous story that happened that, of course, I feel like a lot of you know. But for those of you who don't know, before there was Mickey Mouse, there was Oswald the Rabbit.
Oh, well, it's about time you started talking about me. I mean, I've been hanging around this place for pretty much almost a year, but my only appearance was in your trailer. I mean, for Pete's sake, I am the greatest retro reject. Why haven't you put me in any of your videos? I don't understand it.
Okay, well, sorry, Oswald. I just couldn't think of an episode that I could do to fit you into.
Well, sorry, ain't gonna cut it, Retro Reject. I'm expecting pay for showing up for this cameo. And I only accept cash.
Really, you want pay? Jeez. Like, I pay you guys all the time, but fine, here's $5.
Well, thank you very much, Retro Reject, because you know the saying, money talks, and what Mr. Abraham Lincoln is telling me is that you don't recognize a good character to have part of your Retro Reject crew. Man, that's a nice thing to get out of my system. Alright, I'm out of here.
Man, you guys have no idea how hard it is working with these guys. But anyway, as the story goes, is that when first Walt Disney was starting off with animation and was like delving into like the little black and white cartoons that would start at the beginning of like before an actual movie started. So he first created Oswald the Rabbit with his fellow co-workers Charles Mintz and Margaret Winkler. Now, of course, later on in the career, the cartoons were starting to get a little bit more expensive to create, so both Charles and Margaret, they were asking Disney to this sort of agreement to do something, but Walt Disney didn't want to do it. So both Charles and Margaret, they hired away pretty much half of Walt Disney's animators, and they took Oswald the Rabbit with him. So, wait a minute, let's see if this sounds familiar. Two characters that I guess you could describe as skunks walk away, leaving Walt, aka Bambi, and they eventually take away a rabbit. Doesn't that sound familiar? Moment number 8, the fight between Bambi and Rano. Now, of course, that moment in the movie is probably at least my favorite because it just has this spectacular animation in it, and it's just the simple aspect of nature of two males fighting over a female. And of course, in this case, it was Pauline because basically both Rano and Bambi had their eyes on her. But, of course, how this reflects to Walt Disney's life is, well, very simple. It's just the competition that Walt Disney had back in his day, but then eventually coming out as the victor. Moment number 9, Bambi's 2 children. Now, of course, it's just really simple to say this because Walt Disney himself also had 2 children, which were 2 daughters. Now, of course, one of them was actually their official daughter, and then their second one was adopted. But still, 2 children. Now, of course, in Bambi, the genders of the 2 fawns are very debatable because, I mean, some say it's one girl and then there's one male, but it's really hard to say because, of course, Walt Disney was probably the only person who knew the actual genders, or he just didn't give much thought about people wondering the genders of 2 fawns at the end of the movie. But it's just still, the fact remains, Bambi had 2 children, Walt had 2 children. Moment number 10, the ending of the movie. Now, of course, the ending of Bambi is just the simple image of Bambi standing alone, looking at the edge of a cliff, just looking over everybody else, his wife, his 2 children, and all the forest. And it's just the simple reflection of that, even though Walt Disney is gone, he still is with us in his own legacy. And so, there you have it. I think Bambi is the perfect tribute to Walt Disney, by both an animation standpoint and his life. And if you haven't seen it, I really recommend you go watch it. And I hope this theory gives you guys just a little bit more of an appreciation for the movie. And with that being said, thank you guys for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, whatever the heck you want to do. Maybe hit that little bell icon to get notified when the old school is back in session. And with all that said, the old school is out!